Robinson has responded to your question with an expletive laden series of tweets and attacks on you personally. Do you worry that you're getting into something that's going to be quite nasty, a fight that's going to be very difficult?
Look, I stood up for my values today. I don't like seeing racism in our society. I don't like seeing far-right extremists causing violence on our streets.
We have weak cowards. Our government have recognised a terrorist state, and that government are not elected on a mandate. They are elected with 20% of the public vote.
The unified voice of the unholy alliance screams and shouts in our face, both online and at street level, calling us racists, fascists and Nazis. We didn't want or start this war, and it has now been made clear to us that the Islamists and the communists want to wipe out.
Is facing a holy war in the next decade as liberals allow Islam to take over our biggest cities, putting our future as a Christian country under serious threat. But a decision has been made by the deep state and by the elite class to pretend this isn't happening. And when someone points it out, they will deride them as a far-right racist. And if they become too powerful, they will simply designate them an enemy, then a criminal, and eventually, as we're currently seeing with Tommy Robinson, a terrorist. The mainstream media has always played along, and that's why we now have two versions of the United Kingdom. Those who watch the independent media and shows like this, who understand the Unite the Kingdom activist is a patriot like you or me, fighting to the death to save our dying nation. Then we have the others, who rely on the British Bashing Corporation, Woke ITV, and Sly News, which ignore the threat of Muslims and constantly lie about a non-existent far right. Their heroes are women like this.
But it is not just the Chinese government that is a threat to our country. On Monday, the far-right, racist hate preacher Tommy Robinson, who is currently on trial for allegedly refusing to comply with counter-terror police, claimed that his legal costs are being paid by Elon Musk. It is outrageous that a man who has so much control over what people read online every day could be funding someone who stokes far-right extremism on our streets. If this was Putin, the government surely would act. So will the Prime Minister commission the security services to assess the threat that Elon Musk poses to our democracy and recommend measures to this House that we can take to stop it?
Well, I can tell her we do look across the board at threats to our democracy and must continue to do so. I won't comment on the particular case given the state of legal proceedings.
Now, Ms. Cooper was protected there by parliamentary privilege, of course, but she stupidly then went on LBC and repeated her slanderous libel.
Tommy Robinson has responded to your question with an expletive laden series of tweets and attacks on you personally. Do you worry that you're getting into something that's going to be quite nasty, a fight that's going to be very difficult?
Look, I stood up for my values today. I don't like seeing racism in our society. I don't like seeing far-right extremists causing violence on our streets. And those are things that I wanted to speak up for. I'm elected to do that, elected on that platform. And I'm encouraged by the messages of support that I've received from MPs of all political parties and from people from various groups that campaign against racism, who have said that they felt that today I said something that they considered to be brave and courageous. And quite frankly, I think we need to see more bravery and courage in our politics.
Now, Tommy responded to that, writing on X, calling out this lying, slandering piece of shit for who she is. Politicians think they can be above contempt. They are not. Contempt in this case is fully justified, deserved even. Politicians think they can lie and slander someone using their parliamentary privilege and get away with it. Newsflash, they can't. Politicians think they can cry victim after instigating very mild pushback from a working class lad. I don't give a shit about you. You're a cry bully and filthy smear merchant. Ask why Daisy, the deputy leader of the Lib Dems, has not posted about grooming gangs operating in the UK, except for when Elon Musk brings attention to it. And rather than post about this stain on our nation, she opts to criticise Elon for daring to speak out, accusing him of wanting attention off the back of child sexual exploitation. What a filthy piece of shit she is. Her values have led to the industrialised rape and enslavement of generations of British children. But I can tell it is the racist claim that has upset Tommy Robinson the most. So he asked Grok for the truth. This was the reply. After searching Tommy Robinson's posts for racist content via web queries, none appear. His critiques focus on Islamist ideology, grooming gangs, and migration's cultural effects, not racial inferiority. He often highlights anti-white racism or hypocrisy in accusations against him. Specific examples of prejudice based on race rather than behaviour remain elusive despite frequent media claims. He sent that to Daisy Cooper and added anything to say, "You filthy smear merchant." Now, it's important we're honest about what is happening here, and I think Bruce Unfiltered summed it up very well by writing, "Let's be clear. What Daisy Cooper said in Parliament is dangerous." She effectively implied Tommy Robinson shouldn't be allowed a legal defence unless it's government approved. That's authoritarianism in a nutshell. Under UK law, every person has the right to a fair trial and to appoint or receive legal assistance from whoever they choose. Nothing in the Legal Aid, Sentencing and Punishment of Offenders Act 2012, the Legal Services Act 2007, or the Proceeds of Crime Act 2002 gives the government any power to restrict who can fund your defence, unless that money comes from criminal activity. Elon Musk hasn't broken a single law. But Daisy Cooper's words break with the very foundation of British justice, equality before the law. Indeed, Bruce believes the entire terror trial of Tommy Robinson is a chilling development for a country where our democracy is now online.
Whether you like him or not, this one should set alarm bells ringing, because this isn't really about Tommy Robinson at all. It's about what happens when the state decides who it wants to target. When the state starts using counter-terrorism powers on people it politically disagrees with, that is outright authoritarianism. And if it can happen to one person, regardless of your opinion of them, it can happen to absolutely anybody. But I think we've already seen some cases of this. The prosecution claimed the stop wasn't about his views, but his supposed far-right associations. Yet they didn't name a single individual, and funny enough, in today's climate, that could have been any one of 20 million people. Because once you give the state the power to decide who's extreme, who's dangerous, or who deserves scrutiny, it is only a matter of time before that label lands on ordinary people who simply disagree. The case has been adjourned until November the 4th, when the verdict will be handed down. And let's be honest, the outcome will tell us a lot about where Britain really stands on liberty in 2025. This isn't about defending one man, it's about defending the principle that no government should have the power to criminalise opinion.
Now, remember, outside of the UK, Tommy is viewed very differently. I mean, overnight, he's just been given a hero's welcome in Israel, where he is on a state visit as a guest of a sound Israeli. We're doing here on Outspoken. Please consider joining our thriving community over on Substack, www.outspoken.live. You can sign up completely for free, but Substack is so important to me. It is a free speech platform. It protects me from big tech cancellation. Plus, you get to communicate directly with me. Head on over www.outspoken.live, enter your email address and sign up.
Feeling?
I'm happy to be here, mate. I'm honoured to be here.
What are you hoping from this trip?
I'm hoping to show solidarity with real strong leadership. I wish our country had a leader like Netanyahu. We have weak cowards. Our government have recognised a terrorist state, and that government are not elected on a mandate. They are elected with 20% of the public vote. So I don't want people in Israel to think that the other 80% of people, not even the majority of Labour support them, support recognising a terrorist state. So I'm here to show solidarity with the Jewish people and the Israeli people for a strong and hopefully form good friendships and understand, because Israel is surrounded by jihad. Britain is going to be surrounded by jihad. Yeah? The problems that Israel faces here are the same problems that we're going to face. So the security issues that Israel has and Jews have in the state of Israel, we're all going to face in Europe.
Sheer numbers. Because you hear the numbers, don't you? But when you see that and you see an individual face and you think about an individual family,
and you think about the individual children or the mum and dads, and you see the scale of that, and then you know the size of Israel, you know that every single person must have known someone that was directly affected as a family, as a community, by this attack. And then you see so many, like, as you walk around, you see the elderly, you see the young, the beautiful young women, all of them, they're not out fighting the war. None of these people, look. So you see that, and it just brings it home.
Now, I would argue that's a humanitarian, not a racist hate preacher. There was a time, you might remember it, many moons ago, before the MSM stopped platforming people like myself, Katie Hopkins and Tommy Robinson, where he was allowed to speak openly on the state broadcaster, the British Bashing Corporation, to the chief interrogator, Jeremy Paxman, no less, and explain his journey and explain how he wasn't a racist. Now, given lots of people are waking up to what's going on at the moment and giving Days and Koopies smears, I actually think it's worth you seeing quite a bit of what Tommy Robinson said back then.
I had a long time to think about where I was going. I know it seems strange to say it, but where I was going, where the movement was going and what I want. And then when I come out of prison, I see the organisation, elements of the organisation, fringe elements that were on the outskirts, had been welcomed back. I'd battled for 4 years to keep racists, Nazis, extremists out of this movement. I've battled and dedicated my life to it. And they were invited back. And I felt let down by the people that in the organisation that were in positions, the same people that are calling me a traitor now, that were in positions, invited Nazis to stand with them in the street. Now, I am the public face. It's my face that is up for this. I have to be true to myself. I despise Nazis. I despise racism. I'm not about to be the public face. And that was one thing. I'd made that decision. I hadn't left, and then Lee Wrigley was killed.
What was the EDL? What is the EDL if it's not racist?
It's not racist. You see, this is what I want to say. I want to say a personal thank you to supporters of the English Defence League, because it's become my life, and I've grown to love many people in that movement. I see this as a massive step forward in the fight against Islamic extremism and fashion and the far-right extremism. The English Defence League is a collective group of ordinary people. The majority of people in that movement are ordinary people with heartfelt concerns, and they've been branded racist. I've been branded racist for 4.5, 5 years. Everyone's called me a racist and extremist.
Yeah, but you did say there should be no more mosques built in Britain unless Islam reformed.
Yeah, yeah. No, I said there should be no more mosques unless they're moderated and regulated in a way like schools are with Ofsted. I said I believe we need to know who's funding them. We need to know which preachers of hate are speaking in them if they are, and we need British-born Muslims in control of those mosques. Now, what's coming out of this is everyone's saying the English Defence League has been taken over by Nazis. That's not actually the case. But the point is that the first demonstration that I didn't go to, Manchester, they were welcomed back. There was a recent demonstration in Portsmouth where splinter groups, which I've fought to keep out of it, actually give speeches. So for me, this is all about, for me, is being the public face. We've done this for 4 years. We've raised the profile. I think the English Defence League has been very successful in bringing things to the forefront. Sure. I now think it's at a point...
Have you changed your views?
My views, I think I want people to listen to my views, because what people portray my views and believe my views would be is not what they are. I don't hate Muslims. I don't hate Muslims at all. I have a...
Why do you want to stop mosques being built?
Unless they're moderated and regulated, because I believe there's a problem. And every time we see an undercover documentary, we see problems, and then it's like they say, oh, that's not Islam, and it's not representative. But there is a problem. But for me, this leaving is about, we're 4 years in. I see this as a step forward. I see this as an inevitable progression into what we were doing, and I don't see it beneficial to continue doing what we were doing.
Do you still think this country's in danger?
I know this country's in danger. I've just sat in there and watched the news and seen that we've got 2,000 British people out fighting out for Al-Shabaab. This country is in danger. Let's not pretend the biggest threat to this country is Islamist terrorism, extremism. At the same time, I despised far-right extremism. I've battled through this organisation to be true and to steer it in what me and my cousin Kevin have built it on. And we've built it on inclusive and welcoming everybody.
Sure, but you haven't changed your views.
No, basically, no one's listened to what I've said for 4.5 years, because our message has been lost in translation because of the actions of a minority. And that's...
I just thought that was really important for you to hear today. And isn't it fascinating how much the state broadcaster has changed in just a decade, a conversation that they would never allow us to hear today? And by the way, I couldn't believe this. Its presenters have been revealed as hard left extremists, right? Because the moment they leave the corporation, they show their true colours. We've seen it with Emily Maitlis, we've seen it with Lewis Goodall and John Sopel, and now we're seeing it with the ex-flagship BBC News presenter. She fronted their election, she fronted the Today programme, Michelle Hussein, a Muslim who has bizarrely used her first public intervention as a campaigner for Islam to defend, wait for it, the ISIS bride, Shamima Begum. She said the media treated Begum poorly because she was a Muslim, rather than because she was a terrorist traitor unconcerned by beheadings. Watch.
Nearly 6 years ago, the chair of the press regulator IPSO said, after 5 years in the role, that he thought Muslims were on occasion written about in the newspapers in ways Jews or Catholics would not be. And I'll share an example here of someone for whom I think it is worth asking the question, would she have been perceived exactly the same way if she'd had a different name, had not been Muslim? This story goes back to 2015 and 3 school friends leaving their homes in London, travelling through Turkey to join Islamic State, a proscribed terror group in Syria. It was soon after the murders of hostages, including journalists James Foley and Stephen Sotloff, aid workers Peter Kassig and David Haynes, and Alan Henning, a Salford taxi driver who was on his 4th trip delivering supplies to Syria when he was abducted by IS. Shamima Begum, one of the 3, was 15 at the time. 4 years later, The Times found her and interviewed her in a camp in Syria. She was 9 months pregnant, about to give birth to a 3rd child, her older 2 having died as babies through illness and malnutrition. The callousness of her words in that interview, including her saying she'd been unmoved by the sight of a captured fighter's severed head in a bin, prompted widespread revulsion. Amid the scramble to get the first TV interview, both Sky and the BBC reached her. One broadcaster said their correspondent had tracked down the IS bride in a hospital just hours after she gave birth. The other recorded their interview when her son was 3 days old, the distinctive cry of a newborn audible off camera as she spoke.
Okay, I'm genuinely astonished. And all her champagne socialists, filled with suicidal empathy, no doubt sat there nodding along. This is batshit crazy, but there's more.
When I watched these interviews, I saw something that appeared to go entirely unnoticed in editorial decision-making or was regarded as unimportant. I saw a teenage mother only just postpartum. I thought of my own experience, giving birth in NHS hospitals to 3 healthy babies, with family members helping out. I know I was in no fit state to give any interview in the weeks, let alone the days after those births, and certainly not an interview of consequence to the rest of my life, conducted without advice, representation, or even access to information. The teenager said it herself in one interview. I don't have my phone. I can't go on the internet. I don't know what's going on around me right now. I found these interviews very hard to reconcile with a sense of duty of care, assessing whether an interviewee is in a position to give informed consent or in a position where they can speak freely. Shamima Begum was still living among IS women. It was rare to see any focus in reporting of how she was under 16, legally a child, when she made the worst decision of her life, which, to be clear, was also criminal, because IS is a designated terror organisation.
Oh, so I'm glad you got that in there. At the end, Michelle Hussein. How utterly bizarre. How utterly crazy. That the BBC's former flagship presenter goes on stage for her first major speech, pushing the Islam message and says, you know what, we've got to rehabilitate Shamima Begum. And let me tell you, when was the last time that there was a Catholic 15-year-old suicide bomber who went over to join one of our enemies? Let me tell you, that would be a big story, okay? But the suicidal empathy of an idiot like Michelle Hussein, a dangerous idiot like Michelle Hussein, proves that the MSM have an agenda. Their agenda is to cover up the serious threat that Islam, including the terrorists invading our country on a daily basis, pose to ordinary Brits. Yet the litany of evidence about what we are facing, it piles up every day. Like, why is Rhiannon White, who was allegedly killed last October by a migrant at the Asylum Hotel where she worked, who is currently on trial, why is she not a household name when you listen to the horror of her case, which is currently being outlined to court?